We have to react right now to what we saw last night. Tucker Carlson has the footage, thanks to Republican members of the House. He's got the footage of January 6th. There's thousands and thousands of hours of it, because obviously a lot of security cameras all over. And he's got all this stuff. He's going through it. He put some of it up last night. Here's where I am on this, Clay. My top line. It doesn't change what you or I would assume, think about this situation, because it always seemed to me, we knew there was some footage of people walking around, taking photos, taking selfies, talking to police, being escorted by police. There were clearly people who went inside the Capitol who had no real ill intent at all. And I think it's even arguable that the people that if you didn't attack a cop or commit vandalism, destroy anything, and the cops were waving you through, is that trespassing even? I think that's shouldn't be a crime at all. And so there's that component of it. But the broader point that I think comes across, I wrote an op-ed, I don't know, maybe a year, 18 months ago now, where I said anybody who calls January 6th an insurrection is an idiot. And I know that's a harsh word, but it's just ridiculous. And that is central to what the Democrats have been saying all along. This was, Clay, the worst day in our history since 9/11, as bad as or even worse than Pearl Harbor. This is what people have said. Members of Congress.
Karine Jean-Pierre said it was the worst, biggest threat to the country since the Civil War. I mean, that's what she said as recently as 2 months ago.
You see that footage last night. You see what Tucker showed of people walking around quietly, calmly, even respectfully. There are some people who, if something was knocked over, they pick it up on the ground. And you also see that footage of Officer Sicknick, who clearly was not killed that day or by actions of protesters that day. And what's your sense of, how much more egregious can the insurrection lie be?
I think, and we've got audio, which we'll play in a sec, but to me, the couple of things that stood out is the QAnon shaman got over 4 years, I believe, in prison. And when you watch the video, there was zero threat that he ever posed. Now, if you want to get him on trespassing, if you want to get him on some sort of minor misdemeanor violation, I understand. But this guy was just dressed in a way to draw attention and became a focal point of the investigation as a result. The Sicknick lie, the fact that they would use his death and argue for years, as Joe Biden does and as many Democrats still do, that on January 6th, police officers were murdered by these protesters, that helps to foment their idea of this insurrection. It is indefensible. And I knew when we weren't getting all the full footage released that there was likely going to be exculpatory evidence in terms of how dangerous this actually was. But what Tucker has already shown us, I think, has upset the apple cart in a real way. And we've got a couple of cuts, Buck. Chuck Schumer has already taken to the Senate floor reacting to what is being said and what is being shown. I want to make sure I get these right. Here is a portion of Chuck Schumer decrying Tucker Carlson sharing footage from January 6th. And then when we come back, we'll talk about that for a sec. But then, Buck, he took it a step further. He actually called out Fox News and Rupert Murdoch and demanded that Fox News not air any more footage of January 6th that they have. But first, here's Chuck Schumer on Tucker Carlson.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson ran a lengthy segment last night arguing the January 6th Capitol attack was not a violent insurrection. By diving deep into the waters of conspiracy and cherry-picking from thousands of hours of security footage, Mr. Carlson told the bold-faced lie that the Capitol attack, which we all saw with our own eyes, was somehow not an attack at all. He tried to argue it was nothing more than a peaceful sightseeing tour. Can you imagine? A nonviolent demonstration, a perfectly fine and appropriate instance of people expressing their opinion. I So many others who were here in the Capitol, and millions of Americans are just furious with Tucker Carlson and Kevin McCarthy today.
First of all, he's lying about what Tucker, I watched it, you watched it. He's lying. Tucker said and showed that he didn't just talk about, showed the footage of people breaking windows, you know, getting violent, physical with the cops. Now, when we say getting violent, of course, the violence that the protesters that some of, and it was a small minority of, engaged in against Capitol Police, that had been standard operating procedure for Antifa and BLM protests for months the summer leading up to this. Push on the cops, throw rocks at them, you know, throw bottles of urine at them, blind them with lasers, all things that were done routinely, repeatedly, and Democrats said it was about social justice and a racial reckoning. So it happens on January 6th, and those people are ISIS. They're the scum of the earth. They're the worst people ever. This is what the Democrats tell you. But you also notice Chuck Schumer, he's lying to you. He's lying to all of us because he says that it was just a walk in the park or peaceful. No, he showed that there were some people who were getting physical and violent with the police. He just also showed all the other people walking around the Capitol calmly and even respectfully. And then this is about, is it an insurrection? This isn't, were there people that committed vandalism and was that illegal and a dumb thing to do? Yes.
And they should be prosecuted, as we've said for a long time, regardless of what your politics are. You have a right to protest and seek redress from the government. As soon as you trespass, as soon as you commit an act of violence, you should be arrested, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, independent, whatever you are. And that's basically what everybody has said that I've heard.
Yeah, and the ones that really have done so much harm to the system, I think, are the Democrats who demand a two-tiered system of justice. Meaning that, you know, when Democrats do things, when Biden voters do things, it's always, oh, we got to take a holistic approach to this. When anybody who is affiliated with Trump even crosses the line in the slightest, there are people who were sitting in solitary confinement for months for nonviolent crimes related to January 6th. How can that be justified? How can we think we're a nation that is rooted in the rule of law? How many people did that happen to who were at BLM riots, and there were a lot of them, and they burned down buildings and they looted stores and they attacked police and people were killed? Only person killed on J6, an unarmed female protester. Can you imagine? Imagine there's one of those BLM riots. And I remember I was shocked, and I'll be honest with you, I was angry that it took Trump as long as it did for him to speak out about the madness on the streets. I think that there was a little bit of a White House asleep at the wheel situation for about 6 weeks starting in June of 2020. But put that aside for a second. He got it, you know, he got into it and figured out once they started toppling all the statues and everything, the Trump that we know showed up. But Clay, imagine that a police officer just pulled his gun out because there was a BLM riot going on at a store, at a building. Perfect example. Federal courthouse in Portland. They were throwing firebombs at it. What if a cop who was trying to hold the line at that fence had just pulled out his gun and just shot a 120-pound woman in the neck?
He'd be in prison for the rest of his life. And also, I want to play this cut too, Buck, because what's happening here is basically you had a one-sided prosecution, right? It's as if the prosecutor got access to all the evidence and could only share his side. And now the defense is getting an opportunity to say, well, let's provide further context for many of these videos that have played on constant loop. Even the Josh Hawley video where they tried to embarrass him by showing him as he was, fleeing the Capitol. Well, there's a ton of other people. He was actually at the back of a group. We didn't see the earlier part of that video, right? I mean, that's clearly a edited video that's designed to share a particular story. And it's having effect because Schumer, in his speech on the Senate floor, also demanded that Rupert Murdoch and Fox News not allow Tucker Carlson to show any more footage. Listen to this.
To say January 6th was not violent is a lie pure and simple. I don't think I've ever seen a primetime cable news anchor manipulate his viewers the way Mr. Carlson did last night. I don't think I've ever seen an anchor treat the American people and American democracy with such disdain. And he's going to come back tonight with another segment. Fox News should tell him not to. Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, tell Carlson not to run a second segment of lies. You know it's a lie. You've admitted it's a lie. And Speaker McCarthy is every bit as culpable as Mr. Carlson. Speaker McCarthy's decision to share security footage with Fox looked like a mistake from the very beginning. But after last night, it looks like a disaster.
So what I love about this is, first of all, Schumer is basically doing the promo for Tucker Carlson, as are we. I'm sure it's going to be a massively viewed show tonight, as it was last night, I would wager. Also, the fact, I bet Tucker will play, if I were betting, some of this Schumer audio and video, because it actually confirms much of the thesis under which he is sharing this footage, Buck, which is Democrats are terrified of you seeing this footage, which further contextualizes what happened on that day, because it destroys the narrative, the one-sided prosecutorial narrative of the January 6 hearings, where there was, again, remember, no defense attorney. This was a sham proceeding because there were, I mean, I know you can say Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, but come on, they're jokes. There was no actual defense on that committee. And so you had effectively, think about it as a show trial, one side presenting all the evidence that favors them, and the other side never got to speak. Well, now the defense is coming back and saying, okay, here's the further context, and I think it's making a lot of people who are paying attention to this start to recalibrate what they believe happened on Jan 6, which is why it's so terrifying to Democrats. We played for you Chuck Schumer basically doing his best publicity imaginable for the PR for Tucker Carlson's show tonight, demanding that Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, and company not air additional footage from January 6th. This is being treated, of course, on the left wing in this country as a direct assault upon one of the most foundational elements of their anti-Trump narrative, and so they are going after it aggressively and trying to push their story. And again, I think the best way to think about this is almost as if it's a criminal case, and you have the prosecutor and you have the defense attorney. And if you have a good prosecutor, after the prosecutor speaks, you're like, man, this guy's dead to rights. And then the defense attorney gets up and speaks, and you think, well, on the other hand, I don't think he did it at all. And that's kind of where we are. We just haven't had a robust defense argument as it pertains to January 6th. And it's got the CNNs of the world a little bit rustled. Here's Oliver Darcy talking about, oh, they're trying to rewrite history now.
What we saw tonight, Allison, from Tucker is nothing new. He has been trying to sanitize the very real violence that we all saw unfold at the U.S. Capitol in real time for quite some time now. I think what's really notable here is that he had a very key assist from Kevin McCarthy, someone who was at the Capitol on that day, who condemned the violence in the immediate wake of that attack, but has since tried to get back in the good graces of Trump and the MAGA fan base. And so what's so key here is that he helped Tucker Carlson try to rewrite history by giving him this surveillance footage that he denied to actual news organizations.
First of all, they can't seem to decide whether the argument is, oh, this is all stuff that the defense teams had access to, so it's nothing new, or why is only Tucker Carlson getting access to this, or there's nothing, this doesn't change anything. Which is it, right? And the fact that they're trying to tell everybody, they're the ones that actually doctor footage, doctor audio. You look back at how Democrats play the game with this stuff. The Democrats are the ones that do things that are gross misrepresentations of fact. And on January 6th, he's showing surveillance footage. They can claim it is cherry-picked all they want. It is footage from cameras inside the Capitol on that day.
It's the very definition of history. When he says you're trying to rewrite history, well, writing history is about considering the full context of a historic moment. There is no more reliable history than watching the footage from inside of the Capitol and giving a perspective on January 6th. They're rustled and they're rattled because they were not anticipating their narrative being challenged in this way. That's why they didn't want this footage out in the first place.